Hey Dunchbags, what's going on? It's Landon Remixes here, and it is time for the final edition of Rapid Fire Reviews in 2017, where I'll basically be going back and recapping all the stuff that I intended to do full reviews of on, but it just really didn't end up happening. If for some reason you've never tuned into this series before, it's basically where I go and do mini reviews of a bunch of different albums and EPs. Some of these projects I would have liked to do full reviews of on if I had more time, and some of these are more or less just kind of skip over projects. No matter what the reason might be, here they are all getting compiled onto this one video. So without further ado, let's just get right into it with the first album, La Douleur Exquise by Nick Kaelar, aka Varian. Recently Nick retired his Varian alias as well as Koinu and other aliases that he's pursued in the past. Part of his reasoning being that he's just tired of EDM labels not being interested in what he's sending them. And I mean, if he's sending them music like this, I don't really blame them for not wanting to sign and release his music. I mean, if anything, an album like this is proof that Varian is past that and he should be pursuing doing film scoring, for example, rather than trying to push this type of music to EDM labels. This album definitely feels a lot more like a soundtrack than it does a traditional studio album, so if you're going to enjoy this, you kind of have to go into it with that notion. I'll say I didn't really love this album as much as most of my colleagues did. The heavy pop-leaning style that this album carries through the majority of its track list, at least on my first listen, got really annoying for me. But I will say, kind of going through this album multiple times, it does seem to get better and better with every listen as you kind of notice the intricacies that Oliver has put into the music. They're also a duo that's got a lot of credibility and legacy in this genre, so you can know that when they're giving you this style of music that they're doing it genuinely. And even if I don't absolutely love this album, I will say it is a decent listen, and if you haven't listened through this yet, then you absolutely should. The Troyboi collaboration on Flashback's album Hoodie Nation was actually one of my favorite cuts on that record, but for whatever reason I wasn't really expecting a lot going into this album. When I ended up actually listening to this album for the first time, I was really surprised at how much I enjoyed it. For me to enjoy something in the trap genre, it typically has to be really heavy and like really out there in terms of its production, but Troyboi on this album showed me that it's definitely possible to make a more minimalistic approach while simultaneously using these really wacky and unique elements. I really ended up enjoying this album, and I think you guys will too. If you guys wonder if I ever check my suggestion box, I definitely do, and this album is a prime example of that. I really enjoyed this record. The reason why I didn't do a full review of this album much sooner was because myself and the Kite string Tangle were planning on doing a collaborative review of this album, and it just ended up falling through a number of different times, which was definitely a shame because I really wanted to go in depth with this album. The way that TKST combines his brand of R&B with genres like house and even a little bit of future bass on this album actually feels really natural. It reminds me of a lot of the reasons why I like Disclosure's Settle album. The lyrics are really honest and personal, and I feel like the self-made production really helps push that across. This album is like borderline fantastic. Definitely the one out of this rapid fire review that I would definitely suggest, like, don't miss out on it. After My Name is Thunder, I kind of expected this album to blow me away a little bit more than it did. Most of the tracks on this album I'd probably say are pretty average at best, and I really hoped that rock would be more of a driving force behind this album than it was. Is it wrong that I prefer Paul Van Dyk's vocal trance over stuff like this? Is it really that wrong? If you're going to give me a full-on trance album, I'm going to need something other than just instrumentals to keep my attention captivated. Is that too much to ask for? This, like Steve Aoki's Colony album from my last rapid fire review video, probably wins the award for like most surprisingly good album. I think the last time I remember really liking a dub song was Gold Skies back in 2014, which I'm not even sure they had a huge role in. So this album definitely came as a huge surprise to me. It's like halfway decent electro-pop, even if it is like really half-baked electro-pop. I don't know, it's more enjoyable than their festival trap and big room stuff by far. This album definitely has some jams on it. I mean, I actually got to premiere Pilot's remix of Thriller on this album. I also, though, found myself enjoying the covers on this album a lot more than the originals, like The Force Theme and Thriller. I want to love Scandroid, and I really do enjoy Synthwave, but just somewhere along the lines, those two ends aren't meeting. I honestly felt fairly middle of the road when it came to this album. I guess I just expected KRANE to do something a little bit more out there, considering his past singles and remixes that I've enjoyed a ton. There are some jammy jams on this album for sure. I find myself enjoying the Mern collaboration more and more with every passing listen, but generally I just wasn't super blown away by this album. I love that WRLD's been able to show some degree of artistic evolution with every passing EP, but this EP kind of follows his drum and bass phase, which I just honestly haven't been crazy about. And, you know, I didn't end up loving this EP as much as I thought I was going to, although I will say the one house track on this EP definitely made me hopeful for WRLD possibly going into more of a house direction, which I think he does an excellent job in. I really do like the Chibs brand, especially when it comes to sound design, but when you go and throw a bunch of songs onto an EP, it does honestly get a little bit tiring. I really can't say I prefer this album to Cloud9. At least on that album, Kygo was kind of rooting its sound into a style that he had created. On this album, Kygo really does absolutely nothing to differentiate himself from the vast majority of the pop EDM world right now. I really liked and still like the lead single off of this album, 1 Foot. It kind of gave me a lot of hope that Walk the Moon would be able to return with the kind of summery, youthful sound that they brought with their debut album, but it just didn't really happen. Manse is definitely one of my all-time favorite names in the world of melodic big room. This EP though, I feel, especially on the second track, it was really lacking a lot of the vocal work that I feel like makes Manse's production really stand out. This EP seems to be focusing like 99% of its energy on its melodies, and although that would have worked for me like back in the day, it's not really doing so much for me now. This EP is actually pretty sick. In a live setting, I would definitely get down to this kind of stuff, even the stuff that's like borderline repulsive. It's like so bad that it's good. I've really liked a lot of Virus Syndicate's features this year, especially on 93 Style by Ivory and that Dodge and Fusky EP. So I thought this EP would be a really natural fit for me. Although with Virus Syndicate taking center stage with this EP, things did feel a little bit weird, especially since all the producers that are featured kind of have drastically different sounds from each other. And I don't really think he did anything absolutely that extraordinary with this EP either, although I will say I really do like that Ulasile collaboration. And last but not least, we have the debut album from Charlie, aka Dumu. This album is just absolutely chocked full with these really short, really pretty acoustic driven songs. And for the most part, this is the type of content that I really prefer coming from this producer. I mean, I'd take the content of this album any day over What Feels Right, for example. Although I don't personally see the need for Charlie creating this alternate alias to put out music like this, considering it's really not that far out from what he was doing with the Illuminate EP, but who am I to tell him what to do? Regardless, I'd say that I like this album. It's a really good, like, put you to sleep in a good mood type of album, which is definitely a good thing. I definitely suggest you guys go check this one out for yourselves. And that just about does it for this year's end of the year edition of Rapid Fire Reviews. I hope you guys enjoy videos like this. It's really nice to be able to say things about albums without having to commit myself to doing a full review, because that can be really stressful trying to do this many, as you can tell. Anyway, if any of these albums sound intriguing to you, you can always find the Spotify links for them down in the description below. And if you have any comments to leave about any particular albums or EPs I covered in this video, make sure to let me know what you think down in the comment section. Anyway, I'm Landon Remixes, end of the year videos coming soon, as well as a couple more reviews before the year is over, hopefully, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.